Hi, I'm Angela Fair. My channel is all about helping you to become your own favorite watercolor artist with tips and techniques to help you increase your watercolor skills and paint from the heart. Today we're talking about color. I'm going to be using primary colors to create a painting, but not in the way you might think. We'll be working with some color theory, but I don't want you to feel intimidated. This is all stuff that I've learned over the years that has helped me to paint in a practical way. You don't have to know all the jargon and terminology to be able to paint confidently and mix color confidently in watercolor. We're going to start with some basic colors, mix them to create a little bit more complex color, and then create a beautiful floral painting. Let's get started. It's really a great idea to work with your triad, with your three primary colors, really get to know them and how they mix to create those neutrals and those complementary colors. I have here my color wheel, and it's going to help me plan a split complementary color palette for my next painting. And I was thinking I wanted to work with red violet, and I want to make a split complementary color scheme that's working with red violet to red orange. So we're going to choose, I think in that case, our pure color is going to need to be red. And then we have red violet and red orange. Directly opposite that on the color wheel is our green. So our complement to these three colors, which are analogous, they're side by side on the color wheel, is going to be the green that's down at the bottom here. I might take a few liberties with that. We'll see. We'll play with the painting and see. We're gonna start by just playing with getting some color down on paper. I'm thinking of a general floral theme today. It's been a while since I painted flowers. And I'm going to, before I get started, I've got my red violet mixed here, but I'm also going to tease out a little bit of my orange here so that I have some colors ready to go. And I've got this really nice Cobalt turquoise over here. I'm using Blick Artist's watercolor today. I've got links for you to source that if you want to try them out for yourself in the description below the video. I think I want a little more of a red violet, violety violet here. Notice how powerful that phthalo blue is. It really has a lot of impact. And so we have to stir in a little more quinacridone rose there to make it come alive. Okay, there we go. We've got some colors ready to go. We're going to work a little bit in the orangey reds here to get started, and I'm just going to focus on getting one big floral shape on the paper first of all. And rather than thinking we need a full arrangement, rather than just one major shape that we build out from. And look at how pretty that is. It reminds me of a poppy that's just kind of almost done. Get one more petal kind of on this side. And look how pretty that is. Let's enjoy that shape for just a minute. We have all kinds of time here. It's not a race. We're just going to play with color and see where our explorations take us. This is just starting to dot in a bit of a dark. Putting a dark in the flower center, always a good idea. Brings the eye right into that focal point. And I just took a little bit of my red orange and pulled it right into here. So it actually gives me kind of a bit of a neutral red violet. Because my red violet now has that hint of, or my violet now has that hint of yellow in it. Just a little bit of spatter. That helps loosen me up. The more time I spend painting, the harder it is to stay relaxed during the painting process. So I often have to do things like spray my painting with a little bit of paint just to remind me this is not life or death. This is just making pretty shapes on the paper in beautiful colors. And we're going to just stick with these analogous colors for now. And as I'm painting, you know, my original plan was to work with those analogous colors from yellow, or from the red orange to the red violet. And I'm almost thinking now I'm going to be working more in this yellow orange and the red violet. And that would give me actually a full triad rather than the split complements. It gives me a triad of 3 colors that are equidistant from each other on the color wheel, basically. And it's like our primary colors, but it's a little bit off. You know, it's like we took our red, our yellow, and our blue and just shifted one over. And I think that'll actually work really well in this painting. I'm just not liking this shape right here. Something about that shape is bugging me, and I'm just going to soften it out and let it be soft. We can put details up there later. And that gives me a little bit of a sunlight glow up in that corner. Now, we said that blue-green was going to be our color, our other member of the triad. So let's do that right now. Let's put a little bit of it in. It's a beautiful color. That's Cobalt Turquoise. I want a lot of softness in this painting. These little rough edges are so pretty. I don't want to rob them of their power and beauty by making rigid, crisp edges somewhere else. The Cobalt Turquoise is actually a bit of a staining color. I put that little stem down, and then when I used water right away to soften it, it didn't soften very much. And good news is that's totally okay. It still looks soft enough to be kind of its own, well, to just kind of blend with the rest of the painting, I guess. Really wanting that unity happening in my painting. And that's my main goal when painting florals, is just getting that feeling of kind of this beautiful continuity of arrangement. We look for that if you're arranging flowers. You know, we look for shapes that enhance that maybe focal shape. I just bought a bouquet the other day, and the main flower, the big flower, was a lily. Actually, when I bought the flowers, I didn't even know that lily was in there because it was still in bud. And then all of a sudden it popped open, and there it was. And everything else was helping to support that. We had secondary shapes. I think there were some little tiny, I don't know, mini chrysanthemums or something in the bouquet. There were, that's really pretty. There were alstroemeria, which are a very delicate flower compared to the stronger shapes of the mums and the lily. And so all of those differing shapes really supported that main flower. So we didn't need to have all the shapes be the same for it to work, but we just, but all of it kind of supported that original flower and built out from it. And we're doing the same thing here. There's an open space in here that I want to do something with, and I haven't really decided what yet. Using the Cobalt Turquoise might be a good way to go because it will be a cool color beside the warmer colors of the flower. And that will help it pop forward maybe. And I sound like I'm doubting myself because I do. Every painting is an experiment. I don't know if it's going to turn out until it's done. So I just show up and play with the paint and try to encourage it to do beautiful things. Little spatter. Look at how that pulls the color in the center of the flower out around the edges of the painting without needing to overstate details. You know, those could be a spray of little flowers, little blossoms, and I think that's quite quite pretty. I'm going to go to a smaller brush now just because I want a little bit of some finer lines happening in the painting. And I'm going to see if I can't get that nice neutral that I had in the center here again. I'm just darkening it a little bit there. It's quite damp still, so it really wants to bleed. Mostly it's dry here, so I can add kind of some little stamens and see them stay nice and crisp. This is a wetter area and it's going to bleed a bit. One thing about changing brushes is then you get different marks, different shapes in your marks, and so you can see that those lines are very different than the shapes I've been making elsewhere. So I'm going to want to kind of echo those shapes elsewhere in the painting, just with a light touch, teasing out some curving lines. A little dash of splash. I'm going to go back to the cobalt teal again. Cobalt teal really is the warmest thing in the painting. It is the closest to, you know, that coolest blue, since I don't have any real true blues in the painting. And so adding those pops of cobalt turquoise, I have a feeling I've been accidentally calling it cobalt teal. The turquoise is a little bit warmer than cobalt teal. A little bit muddier feeling as well. I'm just toying with adding some stronger line work to the cobalt turquoise as well. Not sure. Parts of this painting are getting very busy. So having those pops of cool color in various parts of the painting really help direct the viewer's eye. And that's the main thing we're doing when we add contrast to our scene, whether the contrast is in strong lines where everything else was otherwise soft, or maybe the contrast is in warm colors where everything else was cool, or vice versa. Maybe your contrast is in patterns of light and dark. Those contrasts tend to serve as quite a magnet to the viewer's perspective. When you place those strong differing elements, they bring the viewer right to that part of the painting. And so we try to really think about placing those contrast areas intentionally. In this case, I'm planning right now where those cool colors will go to bring the viewer to that part of the painting. If I look at my painting and my eye just goes right to one spot and nowhere else, then I know I need to use some of my watercolor strategies to point the viewer in a new direction. Say, look over here. And often when we make a mistake in our painting, it's the same thing. We spend a lot of time trying to fix that part of the painting, and in doing so we inadvertently put a lot of emphasis on that area. All that extra brush mark making, it often will increase the values, and suddenly you have an area of the painting that's very, very dominant because you've spent so much time there. So wherever you're spending the most time painting, probably that's going to turn into your focal point. That's why I'm going back to the center of this flower right now, bringing the eye back into that element. I'm actually going to try something here. Just pull an edge down, see if we can't create some contrast to help define our painting a little bit. reinforce some of those edges. Broken lines work. You don't have to paint outline every petal, but I'm choosing to add some edges to some of those petals to help kind of continue that dance from the center of the flower out to the edges. And then hopefully, once the viewer has traveled around the painting, back to the center again. There is still a lot going on outside of the painting. You know what I'm going to do? I'm going to go dark. I'm going to use my muddy neutral and see if I can't send this area back just by going shadowed here on this side. It might need a friend somewhere else in the painting. We'll give that a minute. Push some of those yellows out to unify. The only thing that's happening now is that I think I might need to change. There are some really pretty complex colors in there, but it's neutral enough that I think the eye comes back here to the painting. But I think I need to do the same maybe on this side somehow, just to help bring some parts of the painting forward and send some back. Let's do a little bit of dark value color up here. And I'm probably dancing on the edge of overworking this painting. I'm okay with that. If you never overwork a painting, that means you've probably never found where your boundaries are. That too far cross the line kind of situation. Wouldn't want to hold back from something because I felt too timid to try it. Just keep pushing those kind of burgundy hues right out. See what I can do. See how dark I can get away with. As this painting develops, something that's been fun to explore is the interplay between edges and softness. You know, we have some areas where everything's soft and flowing together. We have other areas where we have some crisp lines showing up. And they're both pretty in different ways, and they work together in this painting as well. I'm going to go back to my Cobalt Turquoise one last time, see if I can't get a little more pops of color in. We're going to cover up the flower just a little bit. Do a little bit of spatter in this area. Okay, I didn't cover it very well. That's what paper towel is for. I like choosing a color that has a bit of opacity if you're doing those final little pops of color. If you're doing this whole game where you're putting in that pop of cool color to a predominantly warm painting, it pops even more if that color has a little bit of opacity right at the end of the painting. If it's not quite as transparent as the rest, it'll stand out in some of those dark areas just a little bit more. In fact, Just touch in a little bit right here, and that'll really bring the eye into that part of the painting. We don't have to define why that color is there. You just put it there and let it be pretty. A little line work to remind us that there's foliage coming out. This is a flower arrangement, sort of. It's this picture of a flower arrangement. It's a symbol of a floral arrangement. No matter how well I paint this, it will never be flowers. And I like to remind myself of that because we get bound up in thinking it has to look real. At least that was what I always thought for many years. And when I realized that I could make it look just as real as I felt like it should look, that was very freeing for me. It gave me permission to use lots of spatter. Were this a studio painting where I was painting with unlimited time rather than for YouTube where I really don't want to take up your whole day, I'd probably have planned multiple flowers, maybe another floral here, something coming out here, and then continued the spray of smaller blossoms as well. Having a single flower though is a really good place to start because it gives you that ability to focus on that one thing. How do we make that one flower pop and frame it and support it with beautiful line work, beautiful colors, and create that lovely fresh feeling. I did overwork a little bit in my background areas. In here it's a little bit muddy, a little muddy here too. I'm not sure how much that troubles me, except it does contrast quite strongly with these two areas. One way to solve that would be to wait for this to dry and then maybe do a very pale glaze of this kind of violet color over the entire background. On the other hand, it might not be a big issue. Once this painting is dried and I've stepped away from it for a little while, I'll be better able to evaluate whether or not I need to make corrections and adjustments or completely trash the whole thing and start over. I never try to make a decision on a painting in the moment because I'll either think it's the best thing I've ever made or the worst thing, and usually I'm wrong on both counts. My goal here today was to work with 3 colors to help create a painting that had some balance and had some movement to it. Working with those near triads, the red violet, the yellow orange, and the blue green was really enjoyable. I find it much more fun to choose near primaries rather than primary colors when I'm working in a triad like this. It feels a little more rich and complex because I've chosen colors that aren't quite so pure on the color wheel. You don't need a giant palette of colors to be able to mix beautiful and complex colors in watercolor. And I'm hoping that is the #1 thing you're taking away from this lesson. But I'd love to hear what else stood out to you as something you might try in your own watercolor practice. Leave a comment down below. I'm here on YouTube sharing free lessons and tips. If you don't want to miss a lesson here on YouTube, feel free to sign up for my newsletter in the link below the video. I send out weekly tips and tricks to help you stay motivated and grow in your watercolor journey. Thanks for watching. I'm Angela Fair.